Good evening, TDN listeners and viewers, especially those of this week in interview. Welcome to you and to another episode of This Week in Interview with your host and guide, Anthony Drago. Always a pleasure to be here with you, and I want to say, come on in, and tune in. We have a very important and critical topic that we'll be discussing tonight. Invite you to invite your people to tune in as well. This week in interview, my regular listeners, those of you who come back every Wednesday, thank you so much for your continued support. I really look forward to spending this time with you on a Wednesday evening. And if tonight is the first time that you will listen to this week in interview, welcome, come on in, come all the way in, and get yourself comfortable, get your notepad. We will have some information that you may want to take a note of. And those of you in Dominica listening on RVR Jams Radio on DigiPlay channel 59, welcome to you as well. Hope all is well on the Nature Isle. And in the Toronto market, we have online radio SBE carries this week in interview live as well. Wherever you're listening to us from, however you're listening to us, those of you who are driving and cannot watch the video, then you're listening on tdnradio.net. Welcome to you. If you're looking at us on tdntv.net as well, those of not everybody has Facebook, and so we have tdntv.net. We also have YouTube. Uh, TDN This Week in Interview has its own YouTube page, as well as TDN Radio has a YouTube as well. Our Facebook, our Roku, and all of the Instagram, all of those platforms, we are on there. And if you are on a platform where you can, you should subscribe and like and leave a comment, interact with us a little bit to help us to grow. The more we grow, the more we can continue to bring you these crucial and important topics. You can go to Linktree slash TDN network. So linktr dot ee. It's scrolling across the screen right now. So link tree forward dot com forward slash TDN radio. And you will find us when you find that link, TDN network. When you find that link, you can choose what platform you want to listen to us on. So it could, all of the options are there, and you can choose the one that suits you best. So we have a lot to talk about tonight. We have a lot of ground to cover, so I'm going to jump into my conversation really quick. My guest tonight is Mr. Brenton Hilaire. He is the agency manager of Sagicor Dominica. He's also the president of the Dominica Association of Industry and Commerce, DAIC, and he is the president of the Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. So he's wearing all those hats tonight, but we are going to keep it in the context of the hurricane season because we are in the hurricane season. Now it's fast approaching, and we want to make sure that you are paying attention. That's the purpose of tonight's program. If you are in the path, potential path of a hurricane, and that's all of us. I'm talking to you right now from Brooklyn, and sometimes it gets to us. So it might not be a hurricane, it might be a tropical storm, it might be a tropical wave. But if you are in Dominica or Grenada or Trinidad or anyone of the world, Trinidad is a little south, but you never know. But any one of the islands that are threatened by potential storms, this is for you. And as I said, our objective tonight is to get you thinking about it. And even if it may not be a hurricane, all of the islands in the Caribbean are susceptible to some kind of disaster or another. And so we want to get you thinking of what it is that you need to do to be prepared. How prepared are you? And I think that Brenton, Mr. Hiller being the president of DAIC, and Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors, is perfect for that, in addition to his role as the agency manager for Sagicor Dominica. And so I want to quickly go to him because, as I said, we have a lot of ground to cover tonight. Hile, welcome back to this weekend interview. I am honored that you come back to share your information and your knowledge with my audience.
Thank you for having me back. And good night to everyone who is listening from wherever you are in the world. It's a pleasure to have you being a part of this journey that we're going to have tonight.
Yes, and as I said, we want people to start thinking about preparedness. Okay, but before we jump into that, we picked up quite a few. I shouldn't say picked up, quite a few new listeners have joined this weekend interview. So I'm going to give you a few moments to introduce yourself to the audience and let them know who you are and the different various roles that you play as a premier leader, community leader, business leader in Dominica.
Okay, so good night, everyone, again. Uh, I am Brenton Hilliard, currently the agency manager of Surgical Life in Dominica. I've been in the insurance industry for the past 15 years with experience in both sales and administration. So generally, when I speak to persons, I'm able to speak to them with knowledge of what happens in the front and the back end of the company. And for surgical, just to share with you, if you are not familiar with our company, we have been in the industry for 185 years this year. So we are a company that's not here today and gone tomorrow. In addition to that, I am also a master financial advisor, recently completed that last year. I am also FLMI designate, which is Fellow Life Management Institute. So one is on the practice itself, and one is from an administrative perspective. So I seek to continuously develop myself in the industry, both from the front and the back end, as I mentioned earlier. I also wear the hat of the president of our Chamber of Commerce in Dominica. I've been in that position for about 3 years right now. Um, our goal is really about advocating on behalf of the private sector. And also, as a part of our mandate, it has been very important for us to help our businesses to prepare for this particular season, being able to first have a plan in place, execute a plan, and also to rebound as quickly as possible. So, I guess in our conversations this evening, it may touch on some elements of the private sector and may also bounce back on the insurance on a whole.
Certainly, thank you for that. So let's just jump right off. We start with insurance. As a as an insurance professional, a business leader, and someone with experience in insurance in the Caribbean, if you said you've been in the insurance industry for 15 years, which means that you would have had the baptism by fire, so to speak, of some pretty um, challenging times with Tropical Storm Erika, Hurricane Maria, and some of the other, you know, events that have been taking place in Dominica. Tell us about your thoughts in terms of our people and insurances. And if let's say pretend like I'm somebody who's moving to Dominica. I'm not from Dominica, I'm moving to Dominica and I am going to get property in Dominica. And I come to you and ask you for advice in terms of insurance needs. What are my needs for insurance? I have a home, I have a car, I'm thinking of starting a business. From an insurance point of view, how would you advise me to proceed?
But the thing that I've learned in this business is that everyone has a different priority in life.
Hmm.
In our industry, what we really do is we listen to our clients and based on what's important to them, we first tackle those areas because there are so many different areas that we can work with individuals in our industry. I mean, we do property, we do life insurance, we do retirement planning, health insurance, income protection. The list can go on. But at the end of the day, not everyone is in a position to take care of all of these needs. And insurance at the core of it is really about risk management. So in the conversation with persons, we first determine what is their top priority. Then we have to also determine what is the budget that is available to them. And then based on that, we then see what is the path that should be taken for that particular individual. So the conversation we have with every person is different because every individual, as I mentioned, has a different priority, has a different budget, and we do our best to secure them within their means and within their current circumstances. And then in terms of insurance, I like to say that it is a journey. It is not a sort of one-stop event. For example, using yourself with what you just shared, the scenario could have been you came, your concern was securing your property. We could have dealt with that at that point in time. But what if in 2 years you found a very lovely Dominican woman and you got married and she was the apple of your eye? That now introduces a different priority for you, which is yes, protecting the property, but also protecting the livelihood of that wife of yours in case you're not
Mm.
there. And then that would be a different conversation. So as time goes by, as circumstances change, we seek to stay in the loop of our clients' lives to see where we can continue to provide value to them. So it's like we're growing with our clients.
Mm. So, so insurance, as you said, is a question of understanding an individual and helping them to understand the potential risk and prioritizing which of those risks, because everybody has, most people have a limited budget. But I would think that someone's home, the protection of someone's home, especially in the island where we are prone to storms and hurricanes, and it doesn't even have to be a hurricane. It can just be a storm that brings significant amount of rainfall. I would think that that may be at the top of the list of most people's priority. And so let's talk about the type of protection that one can have or ought to have when it comes to thinking about their property and the risk that is posed to their property by an impending storm.
Okay. I like what you said there. You made a statement. It may have seemed like a very small statement, but in the context of our environment in Dominica, I don't think we can underestimate the significance of it. So you said outside of a storm, rain. And we have seen firsthand in Dominica that the rain can cause significant damage to our infrastructure. So really and truly, I would say for us in Dominica and maybe for the Caribbean islands, to a lesser extent the wider world, because I've been seeing floods happening around the world at crazy times right now.
Yeah.
We don't have to wait for the hurricane season, or we should not wait for the hurricane season to start thinking about protecting our assets. It has to be something that is more at the forefront of our portfolio planning because in some cases, the investment that we make into these properties is significant. And in most cases, it is so significant that we are not in a position to build it back should something happen. So it is definitely worth considering as early as possible. Now, in terms of getting coverage for your property, there are different things that have to be considered. And there are different ways that it could be considered as well. I should also mention that if someone is doing a mortgage, then that is going to be mandatory because if you're taking a mortgage, the bank has an interest in a property, and the bank wants to also make sure that from their end, managing their risk from their portfolio, if something happens to that property, then they know that there will be some form of compensation to either rebuild the property or pay off the mortgage, or most likely rebuilding the property. So the first thing is understanding the risk at hand. The reason I say that is you are either going to cover that property for what we call under construction. There's a policy that is available where, as your property is being built, you can secure it against various effects such as hurricanes, wind damage, floods, and so forth. Then after the property is completed, you can then change it into what we call the homeowner's property, homeowner's coverage. Similar coverage to under construction, but to a larger extent. and that covers practically everything. Just to name some of the items that is covered, we are looking at fire, explosion, lightning, earthquake, volcanic eruption, hurricane, windstorm, flood, overflow of the sea, collision, impact damage, malicious damage, escape of water, falling trees, and so forth. So it is an extensive coverage, but there's a caveat there, and that's advice that we give to persons. One of the mistakes we tend to make when we go about insuring our property is that we focus on price. So we do what we call price shopping. We go to different players in the market and we look to see who can offer the most affordable, quote unquote, affordable premium. But we tend to forget to look at the back end, which is yes, I am getting it for a reduced premium, but what am I covered for? And I went through my listing that is covered by my company, but this may not necessarily be what is covered by another player in the market. So it is very important that while we shop on price, we also have to pay attention to the benefits because at the end of the day, if you pay a low premium but at the sacrifice of something that could actually cause damage to the property, then you could end up shooting yourself in the foot. You mentioned Tropical Storm Erica. Yes, I was wrong at that time. And I recall after Tropical Storm Erica, there was some damages to properties. And I recall hearing on the streets, they say word on the street, that a lot of people didn't get compensated because it was flood damage. And going back to what I said, some people did not know that their policy did not cover flood damage. So there's some providers who will give you a basic plan, but then to add on other elements comes at an additional cost. So those are key things that you have to understand with your coverage. It's not just about paying, but it's about getting a breakdown as to what does my plan cover my property for. That is very, very important in the discussion.
Yeah, so I wanted to go. You mean you really run through the list of things that you covered? You said fire, explosion, flood. Can you, I mean, just list them again?
Okay, so for us,
Mm.
fire, explosion, lightning, earthquake, volcanic eruption, hurricane, windstorm, flood or overflow of the sea, collision or impact damage, malicious damage, escape of water, falling trees, falling branches, falling utility poles, or theft or attempted theft.
Right. And is that standard in all your policies or some of those options that can be added on?
For us, it's standard. So,
That's standard.
yeah, we are not quote unquote cheap. We are sort of premium in terms of price,
Hmm.
but we have a reason for being premium because we just offer practically everything under the policy.
Right. So so folks, if you have a policy with, and by the way, this is not information, just in case people think, but if you have a policy with Sagicor, it means that you have that whole list of events that you are covered for. And so I would encourage the folks who are listening to us, if you or your relative or your friends, if your coverage is not too Sagicor, and we're not by any way suggesting that there are no other insurance providers who have that comprehensive list, but you might want to pull out your policy and confirm what you're covered for. And if it's not immediately obvious, call your agent and find out exactly what you're covered for. Don't wait until there's an incident and then you are surprised. It's just good practice. If you are paying for an insurance or paying for a product, to know the details of the product, because sometimes, as Mr. Healy said, you may have a policy and at the time you took what you could afford. But now, if your circumstances have changed, it makes sense to go back through that exercise, pull up your policy, call your agent, and find out what are you covered for, and maybe you can upgrade, enhance, or improve your coverage. So the question I'm going to turn back to you, Mr. Hiller, do your agents, though, Do they check in with their clients every so often to find out how their circumstances have changed and how they can enhance their coverage?
We encourage the dialogue. I mean, we cannot control what happens all the time,
Right.
but it's
Hmm.
something that we encourage. We call it in the industry a service review, which is basically a touch base, having a discussion, see if there are any changes to the needs of the person, and see if there are any other areas where we could continue to provide value to them.
There's a question from the audience, and good evening, the audience. There's a few usual suspects, and there are some new ones as well. There's a question here that says, "Does that explain why several persons were underinsured following the passage of Hurricane Maria? Because they may have shopped based on price." But in answering that question, let's just talk about the whole concept of being underinsured.
Yes, that is a whole different conversation. So I will do my best to explain it as simply as I can. So in this circumstance, it is not really based on price. It is based on the value of the property. Now, we hear about inflation. I hear people saying that they used to buy this item at that price before, and today it's a different price. I mean, even last week, I had a shock for myself where I went to a supermarket and I saw Old Henry. Now, Old Henry is something that I remember from childhood days, high school days, and we buy that regularly. And I remember O. Henry used to be maybe $1.50, $3. So when I went and picked it up, it didn't have a price on it. And I asked the cashier, what's the price on this? She said $9.
Oof.
$9? O. Henry? I was in shock.
That's King
No,
Henry. That's King Henry. That's not O.
yeah,
Henry.
that's King Henry, you know. Now you see, similar to this, the cost of building your property is constantly increasing as time goes by. So you may have spent $200,000 to build your property 10 years ago, but as inflation is touching every aspect of life, we're talking about the material to build the property, the labor costs. I hear people saying right now that unskilled labor is asking for $75 to $125 a day. So the cost is generally increasing to replace your property. What that causes is that what you would have insured it for back then is going to be less than the actual cost of replacing it. So to use simple maths, you spent 100,000 to build a property last year. You are insured for 100,000. 5 years from now, to rebuild that same property in light of inflation is 200,000, but you had your insurance for 100,000. Now, the misconception that a lot of people had apparently was that because I insured the property for 100,000, that is what I was eligible to receive. Now, in the law of property insurance, and that's specific to property insurance, what it says is that if you are underinsured, that is, the value of the insurance is not meeting the cost of replacing the property, you are sharing the risk with the insurance company. And sharing the risk means that a ratio is applied to any claim that you submit. So, using that same example, you are valued at 200,000 now, insurance is 100,000, and you had damage to your property, the damage was about 50,000. You cannot think that, hey, I'm insured for 100,000, I'm going to get my full 50. No, because it's a ratio of 100 over 200, that's 50%. 50% is going to be applied to that 50,000. What you will get is actually 25,000.
That's interesting.
So that is what caught a lot of people off guard, where they built properties, but they never came back to update the value of the coverage on that property.
Wow. I want to digest that. I want to help my audience to digest that. So I built the house. At the time I built it, it was valued at 100,000. I didn't shop based on price. Maybe I did, but I did ensure that I had coverage at the time that would cover the value of my property. Never mind deductibles and so on. So my insured value is 100,000. So if I have damage that doesn't meet up to 100,000, I always assume that the insurance would cover that. I mean, your deduction, your deductible, and so on and so on. But I am now learning that no, your insured versus your value is used as a ratio to calculate the percentage. Hmm, interesting.
Yes. So
So,
that is what caused the whole talk because prior to Hurricane Maria, we were not, and I'm speaking about us as a nation, we were not in the habit of continuously updating the value of our property. So it provided a very rude awakening for a lot of persons. And since then, there have been measures taken to sort of prevent this from occurring. But there's still few incidents I understand where it could happen, but it's really because of the choice of the individual.
okay. So the onus is on the owner to come to the insurance to say, hey, my the last time we did the valuation, it was 3 years ago. I want to do a new valuation to make sure that I am fully covered.
That is correct. Now,
Right.
there's a caveat there, and I'm going to share the best practice. The best practice is that you should do a new evaluation every 3 years. Now, the law also provides that if the value of your insurance falls between 85% and 100%, the claim would be treated at 100%. So
Okay.
you have a 15% window there.
Mhm.
And the idea is that within 3 years, your insurance value should not fall outside of that 15%. So it gives you time to maintain the premium and then after 3 years, evaluate and then increase the coverage.
I see. I see. Because there's nothing like to say, well, my insurance is fully covered, therefore I have what I'm insured for is replacement of my property. People think, well, if I have a home and my home burned down, I have insurance. The insurance is going to pay me to be able to rebuild my home. That's a slightly different nuance, I know, but that's another part of the education of the people to say, listen, even though when you insured your property, you insured it to the full value at the time. As time go on, if you have a fire that destroys your home or flood or hurricane that destroys your home, you cannot just assume that, oh, I have insurance, therefore I'm good. Let me just go down by Mr. Hill and put my claim. I can even pass by a contractor and book him to tell him, oh, get ready, I want you to rebuild my house for me. I'm going to Sajiko going to give me money to rebuild my home. If you have not done that constant 3 year reevaluation, reassessment of your insurance need.
That is correct.
See, we're learning, folks. We just into the first part of the conversation, and we're learning quite a bit. No, no, this is valuable information because insurance is a thing people tend to purchase, and they put the contract in a safe or in the back of the bureau or wherever they put it, and wherever they keep their papers along with their mortgage and whatever, and they forget about it until it's time to use it. Then they go take it up and unwrap it in whatever they have it wrapped in and say, okay, here's my insurance policy. But we're saying no, you have to be actively involved in managing
Yeah.
your insurance coverage.
There's some other points on that while we are on it.
Uh-huh.
So I spoke about the inflation aspect of it, which is over time. But there's another concept where people upgrade their properties after it is built. So it was 100,000. After you build the house, you figured you wanted a pool. You added a pool to the property, added a patio. That is going to automatically increase the replacement cost of the property. So anytime that one has done some sort of major work on the property, they should reevaluate it right after so that they can see if they are underinsured, which they most likely would be.
Mm-hmm.
That's another element. And another element I'm going to add is that in terms of valuing your property, I would recommend that you get someone who is sort of certified in that field, because if you maybe just get a plain contractor who has no real experience to do a document, the insurance company could use it. But at the end of the day, if that document is undervalued, then that could put you in a situation in the future. So let's say your property was actually worth 100,000 to replace it, but the contractor did it and said your property is valued at 75,000. Right there and then, if you insured it at 75,000, in truth and in fact, you are underinsured from inception
Right.
based on that erroneous valuation you got.
Right. And also, the other thing that people have to keep in mind is because so many people get the insurance associated with their mortgage.
Yes.
So the bank, as long the bank knows, okay, I loaned you 100,000 to build your house, and you're paying down your mortgage, and your mortgage is now 70,000. The bank is not going to take the initiative and tell you you need to go increase your or do the reevaluation of your insurance because the bank is still covered. And again, so many people treat, as you said, it's not a one-time event where you okay, I have my policy and I have automatic deduction from my salary that goes to pay my premium every month, so I'm good. I don't have to worry about insurance anymore. No, you have to understand that you have to actively manage your insurance based on the increased value of your property, maybe change of risk of your property as your property age, and all of those things. So it is something that you have to actively manage. I think if that's all we learn from tonight's program, because I can see you, like, for example, let me put up this thing for you. It says, whoa, how many policyholders are aware of that? It's incredible. So I'm saying, if just that education alone that folks can be aware of, and as we are in the hurricane season, I know, as you said, you cover so much more than just hurricane damage. So you should be thinking about this not just at the hurricane season, but it's especially
Yeah.
important as we approach the hurricane season. If you have not looked at your insurance policy, one, to make sure that you're covered for the various risks, you time to do that, but also to really think about what value you are insured for, and if that is sufficient to replace your home were you to, or to repair your home were you to suffer uh, a loss. So Hila, this is tremendous stuff. But we're right at the bottom of the hour. Time for a quick break. You're always flying real fast. That's how incredible this conversation is. Folks, stay there. Don't go anywhere. As I told you before the program started, invite folks to join us in this conversation because we have so much valuable insight and information with someone with the breadth of qualification and experience as Mr. Hilaire. We are so appreciative of him coming on to tell us about such a critical part.
How much Dominican history?
Go ahead. You can play it. Yeah. Talking too much. Sam, go ahead. There we go.
Presented by
People say I've got a great smile. Well, I have to say, this is all thanks to the professional team at Beacon Dental Group right here in Dorchester, Massachusetts. I've got world-class dental care. Beacon Dental Group has expert and caring staff dedicated to providing the most advanced and satisfactory treatment in all aspects of oral health. Their services are designed to meet your needs and give you a perfect smile, too. General checkups, cosmetic surgery, Gemini laser service, and advanced procedures, all in a state-of-the-art facility. Call or visit Beacon Dental Group today, 1026 Blue Hill Avenue, Dorchester, Massachusetts, or call 617-282-2146 for a smile that lights the world.
Hey y'all, I just discovered an amazing plugin called Joan, Jock on Air Now, for managing my radio station's on-air schedule. It keeps your visitors updated on what's playing and when their favorite hosts are live. Trust me, Joan is the best choice for your WordPress site. There's a free version available in the WordPress repository, and it's definitely worth trying. If you want even more features, Joan Premium lets you easily edit your schedule with just a click. No need to delete and re-add shows. Don't miss out on Joan. Get it now from the WordPress plugins repository, or visit the developers at gndenterprisesinc.com for more info.
Looking to promote your business, engage current customers, and reach new people? Well, look no further. From the basic presentation to a fully fledged advertisement, use your video ads to attract customers. At Man's Audiovisual Productions, we do just that. We produce videos for business and event promotions, product demo videos, animated explainer videos, fundraiser ads, and much, much more. Engage your clients and sell online. We customize the video to match your brand design. Guaranteed to play flawless on all devices, including smart TVs. Contact us at telephone number 203-690-4342 or 767-245-6238. Visit our website, mansaudiovisual.com, or email us at derekvideo@gmail.com.
First through the break, my guest tonight is Mr. Brenton Hilaire. He is the agency manager for Sagicor Dominica, as well as he is the president of the Dominica Association of Industry and Commerce and the Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. And we were, for the first half of the program, we were talking this insurance, is particularly insurance of property, uh, and just really helping us to think about the whole management of our one of what would most likely be the most important or significant investment or purchase in most of our lives, the construction or the purchase of a home, and how do we help to protect that with insurance. And we're finding out a few things. For example, if you if you don't constantly pay attention to changes in value of your property, you may find that you are sharing the risk with the insurance. That's how the insurance balance is. So if your property is valued at 200,000, but you only insured for 400,000, it is deemed to assume that you have chosen to carry the risk 50-50 between you and the insurance. So any loss that is incurred, you and the insurance have to split that loss or the redress of that loss 50-50. So even if you are insured for 100,000 and the damage is up to 60,000, the insurance is not covered, is not your insurance doesn't cover you for the entire 60,000 because you've chosen to share the risk 50-50. So the insurance company's portion of that risk could be 30,000, let us say. Well, of course, we know we have stuff like deductibles and other
Right.
and other things to deal with, but everything being equal. One of the audience, Mr. Haley was asking, is that standard throughout the across all companies and across Dominica, across the Caribbean in terms of insurance?
Okay, I cannot speak to the Caribbean,
Hmm.
but for us, it is standard across all companies. It is actually a part of the law. So there is an insurance act that guides how insurance companies have to operate, and it's written in there.
It's written in there. Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of folks don't take your time. I mean, when you're head hot, you just purchased a house, you just built a house, you have insurance to pay, you have to do your mortgage, you have to furnish, you have contractors to deal with. You may not be able to pay attention to reading the document in detail because sometimes the documents can be pretty thick. But
Correct.
you owe yourself to, after a month or 2 months or a year, take your insurance policy and read it. It might be boring reading, so read 2 pages at a time. I don't know. In the matter, give yourself 4 weeks to become very familiar, intimately familiar with your insurance policy. Write down your questions that are raised from you going through it, and call your agent. Your agent loves to hear from you because that gives them the opportunity to introduce you to additional products that they think you might benefit from. So keep them occupied, keep them busy, create a relationship with your agent, because guess what? When if God forbid you experience a loss, you now have a relationship with that agent. It wasn't just, well, she sold you the policy, and okay, and you pay a premium. No, developing that relationship and that rapport means that when you suffer a loss, you may not have to go to the big boss, Mr. Healer, right away. You can call your agent and say, hey, this is what happened at my house. I had a plumbing incident and my house got flooded and I suffer some damage. I think it might rise to the level of a claim. You have somebody that you can talk to and get reassurance and guidance. So that's what I'm getting from our conversation. Don't be afraid of your insurance policy, right? You're paying for it on an annual or on a monthly basis. Become familiar with it. Take the onus, the responsibilities on you to make sure that you understand all aspects of your insurance. I say, Hila, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I loved the last part that you said. That's exactly what I was going to speak about. You said reach out to your agents. That is exactly what we are here for. So going back to a point I made earlier about people buying based on premiums, and I mentioned the fact that you need to understand the benefits attached to the premium that they pay. But there's another element that we have to consider, which is the person that is going to represent you, your agent. Because at the end of the day, when you are buying from a company, you have to feel comfortable with the person who sold you that particular solution and whether you feel like you can reach out to the person if you have questions. Because if you don't have that level of comfort, then you might be left to your own. You might not get the kind of support that you need. And the savings, quote unquote savings that you may have experienced from a price perspective might actually cost you much more in the long run. So that is something that we have to consider as well. Who is the individual that's going to represent me on this particular portfolio? Can I put my utmost level of trust and faith in that person?
Right. So develop a relationship. Don't be a stranger. Find out, and by just talking to the person, you might find out some of those things that we're finding out tonight, and not be surprised when you do have a claim. I have a question again. Does Mr. Hiller company have a program to reach out to their policyholders to remind them of the need to revalue their property, especially on the anniversary date? That could be a customer service to their clients.
Yes, it could be a customer service, form of extra customer service.
Mhm.
And I said it could be because of a particular reason. To dig deeper into this question, I will go back to the bank. You mentioned about the bank before we went to the break.
Mhm.
Since Hurricane Maria, a lot of our financial institutions have become a bit more proactive. So, in addition to your mortgage installment, what a lot of them have started doing is they've included a savings to pay for an evaluation of your property. I don't know if persons haven't realized that, but yes. So you're paying for a mortgage, and within that mortgage, there's an amount where once the time comes, they can automatically request that evaluation of your property on your behalf because the money has been put aside.
That's a
That's
good,
one of the
that's a
measures.
brilliant idea. Wow.
Yes, so that's one of the initiatives that the banks have taken to assist. The other one is where within the same mortgage payment, they have an installment that is being taken towards the property insurance. So when the renewal comes about, then it's not an extra burden to you. It's just a matter of accessing that special savings for the payment to be made for that property insurance. Now, in terms of what we do with our clients, I can speak for us. I cannot speak for the other players in the market.
Hmm.
But as a reminder to everyone on the call, property insurance is an annually renewable contract. It is not a lifetime contract. It is something where the insurance company has the right to assess the risk every single year and based on the assessment, decide whether or not they will continue doing business with them. And on the flip side, you also have the right to decide whether or not you will continue doing business with us. If you're not satisfied with the service that you've been getting upon renewal, you could take the business to another company. Now, for us, when we realize that 3 years have passed, we usually ask for an updated evaluation. Now, the reason why I smile when I say it could be a customer service initiative is because, yes, we're providing that insight into you that, hey, you need to update your evaluation, but that comes at a cost, two costs. The first cost is you having to do the evaluation yourself,
Pay a professional to do it. Yeah.
right? And the second cost is the fact that your property is valued more, your insurance premium is now going to be higher.
Hmm.
Not everyone like to be reminded about the fact that, hey, I have to pay more money. But it is something that we provide to our clients, though not everyone is happy about that reminder.
Okay. I have a very specific question from a member of the audience. She says that what happens to an insured property with a mortgage payment in an area that has been declared a disaster area with significant infrastructure damage? If your property is intact, but you have been ordered to leave the area, what happens in that situation? I whatever aspects of that question that you feel qualified to answer, go ahead.
And it goes back to the last statement that I made, which is the insurance company has the right to decline renewing coverage. And I can use Tropical Storm America, I can use Hurricane Maria, where prior to those incidents, there were actually properties insured next to rivers, properties insured next to ravines. And coming out of those two experiences, most insurance companies actually said, we are no longer going to insure your property. It did put a lot of people in a position because here you are knowing that you had coverage for several years, but because of this new assessment of the risk, you're now trying to find a company that is willing to take up that risk. And from what I recall, not many players in the market were really looking for that sort of risk on the portfolio. So in a situation like what you said, the insurance company who is in a particular area is going to assess the risk for themselves and determine whether or not they would
They're
like
going
to
to
continue
continue.
providing coverage. Yeah, it's going to be on a case by case basis.
So that's the insurance answer. Because I guess maybe the person is talking maybe about PD7 or
Yeah,
one of
yeah,
those
that's
areas,
what came
right?
to my mind. Yes,
So if that area has been declared a disaster area and uninhabitable by the government, it is likely that the insurance company is going to reevaluate that risk and say, hey, when on your anniversary, we can no longer provide you coverage. And so in terms of what happens to that house, and the bank, that's a different conversation, because a conversation with the bank is
yes,
going to take a haircut, I imagine, because I would not continue paying a mortgage if I'm not allowed to continue to live in my house and I am not able to sell it. I would say to the bank, hey, you can foreclose, take it. Right. but circumstances are different because people will put a lot
yes,
into their house, more than just their mortgage. People have memories, they have all kinds. So it's a
yeah.
very emotional um, situation, I imagine. But to answer that question, Judith Francis, is that from an insurance perspective, the insurance may consider that property to be not insurable because it's in an area that the government has decided is uninhabitable, and so on. So, uh, in that perspective, though, when someone is deciding that they're going to build, okay, so with the experiences that we have now, where we see the risk of building next to a river or a dry ravine or something, and the same way an insurance company can step aside and say, hey, before we were aware of the level of risk, we could have done business with you, but now we no longer can. Has anything changed in terms of permits and allowing people to continue to build in those risky situations? Does the insurance company have any say in that regard?
We don't have a say when it comes to permits. That would be with planning.
Right.
For us in our industry, we don't ask for approval or the copy of the approval from planning when it comes to insuring properties. What we ask for is the evaluation that
Mhm.
speaks to the makeup of the property, the location, and so forth. And then looking at that evaluation, we determine the level of risk because the evaluation will speak to if there are any perceived risk
Right.
associated to the property. It will speak to how close it may be to any ravines or waterways. So we get that information there to make a business decision on that particular property.
Right. And of course the evaluations that you have that you accept are done by a licensed or qualified professional.
For us, my company, we do not specify who you should get your evaluation from. I know there are other players in the market that actually will provide a list. We chose not to go down that road, but we give advice that when you are seeking someone to evaluate your property, you should really look for somebody who is licensed and qualified to do so.
Okay. Okay. All right. I want to shift gears a little. As much as this is so interesting, I want to shift gears a little bit and put on your hat as the president of the Dominican Association of Industry and Commerce, which is really the organization, umbrella organization for the private sector, people who have their own businesses and so on, which I guess includes insurances. And we're talking hurricane season. Uh, Hurricane season threaten businesses because they the business itself can suffer physical damage.
All right.
There also, if the storm is disruptive, like Hurricane Maria was, for example, then the buying power, people don't go to work. There's also disruption in just commerce activity.
All right.
From from the D, I'm sorry, from the DIC point of view, how do your member businesses prepare if they do anything special or particular on the approach of the hurricane season?
Every company will have its own form of preparation. What we found is that the larger players, through the head office, would have a very well structured system. So they could even have an entire department set up just to do that. In Sagicor, for example, we actually have an individual whose sole responsibility is about disaster preparedness. And it is an activity where the person doesn't just show up prior to the hurricane season, but throughout the year, their engagements, the activities where we review what we call the business continuity plan to make sure that it's up to date, it's relevant, there are discussion, drills. So for us, it is a living department, I would say, because it is not fixed, it's continuously growing. Now, from the chamber's perspective, what we did, and that was in partnership with the other chambers of commerce in the Caribbean, they came together and they designed what they call the business continuity template. It's a free document that you can go on the website and download, and it will actually give you a guide as to how to go about creating a disaster preparedness plan. But the official word is the business continuity plan. And we have held a few sessions in the past with different players in the market to help them to complete it. There are a few individuals in Dominica who have been trained to sort of guide people through the process. I am one of them. The idea of now the business continuity plan is really about predicting possibilities and putting measures in place, possible measures in place based on the possibilities. Because what you find that is in the spur of the moment, you made that statement earlier. In the spur of the moment, your head is hot, you're frantic, you're not thinking straight, and then during that period to try to figure out how do I bring up my business, what do I do, you may not necessarily be making the right decisions because of everything that is happening at the same time. But with the business continuity plan, one would be able to just pull that out, look at the situations, the scenarios, and get that quick refresher of exactly what should be done step by step. So it's a document that every business should have in place, and a document that should be continuously updated, because what you will find is that the risks that you would have perceived last year are different from the risks that could occur this year or next year. I mean, prior to Hurricane Maria, no one anticipated Dominica being hit by a Category 5 hurricane. Now, for us, I recall the conversation where we did have a business continuity plan and it did help us, but there were sort of limitations to it. And when we had the feedback process, we basically told them we never expected this level of damage. So we did not cater to certain scenarios within our own plan. But since then, we have revised it and we have revamped it. One would have thought after Maria that could have been it, but 2020 brought this virus that disrupted businesses across the world. That in itself is a disruption, though not a hurricane, but it's a disruption to business. So, in truth and fact, your business continuity plan should cater to all these scenarios so that in the event that it materializes, you know exactly what the next step is. So, that is something that we promote within the private sector, that there should be a plan. The plan should be shared with key members of your team so that if one person is not accessible, someone else can follow through. And we actually plan to have a sort of refresher on that in the coming weeks of June before the month is over.
If you want to talk about it in more detail, if you have more details, you can, because we may have some folks who are members.
We don't have the date yet,
Okay.
but we have already reached out to ODM, Office of Disaster Management, so they will be a part of the process. Once it is finalized, we will share the details with the private sector so that you can join and get a refresher training, or if you're not familiar with it, that you can be introduced to the whole concept or be prepared from a business perspective.
Right. And you'll say that on the DAIC website, you can go there and you can see the template and you can download it. And anybody can download it and try to fill it out for their particular business.
Correct. It's actually on the CARICHAM website. So it's the Caribbean Association of Insurance and Industry and Commerces within the Caribbean.
Okay, Carry Cham. Okay. I
Yes.
guess most times now with Google, you can Google it even if you don't have the exact name of the website, and it will probably take you there as well, right?
Yes.
So folks, if you have a business or you know somebody who has a business, you could know that there is some help. So you're not starting from zero. There is a template available that you can get access to that's going to help you thinking about the things you should be thinking about that would minimize the impact of any disruptive occurrence, anything that has the potential to disrupt your business activity. So go on there. Good job with DIC taking the initiative to do that. I'm saying DIC, well, of course, you said it's part of the Caribbean Association of Industry and Commerce. So that's really good. The other aspect of it is, uh, although the storms and the different events seem to pose risk, uh, I think there may be opportunities as well for businesses who understand that on the approach of a storm, people panic, people buy more than they would normally buy, and also after an event, people also have a lot of needs. Do you see opportunities? Are any of your members taking opportunity of that, or if when you call it a hurricane economy, I guess, or is that something that that probably needs to be encouraged and to look at?
What I will say is every challenge is a business opportunity. And once you understand that the possibilities are limitless. I remember one session that I went to, and they shared a story of a guy who became a millionaire from selling rocks. And that was some years ago. What they said was that at the time where you had the rise of the C-suites, a lot of these people were lonely because you work long hours, you come home, sometimes you're by yourself, and they had no one to really talk to. The story is that this guy picked up on this need, this challenge in society, and he took some rocks from, I think, Mexico's area, started painting them and putting hair on it, and he got rich off of that. Because what you found is that these individuals were going home and they were talking to the rocks. It's the same way we talk to our pets, whether it's a cat or dog, it's just a matter of having someone to offload on. So the concept is every challenge in society is a business opportunity for someone. And I just listened to a podcast of a guy from England, and what he said is that the people who do well are the people who come up with solutions to things that have not been addressed as yet. Now, in a hurricane season, it's going to provide a challenge, but it's also going to provide an opportunity, and businesses have to look out for what the opportunity is. Coming out of the COVID situation, we had the rise of deliveries. I think this is where it really picked up and started thriving. There was this company was a member of ours, Quick Deliveries. So this individual and their company would pick up food orders and drop it to wherever you work, and that started thriving. Right now, we've reached to the stage where KFC is offering that service. So it came about because of COVID and the fact that we couldn't move around, and it is still with us today, though in a different format. It's an opportunity that came out from a challenge.
Mhm.
Also from COVID, because of the fact that we couldn't go to stores, there had to be some kind of forum or template to facilitate more electronic business, e-commerce. Since COVID, we've seen the advent of different companies having websites. Do It Center has a website that does delivery. You can go on KFC's websites and order your stuff and have it delivered. You have Astafans that came up with a web platform. You have Jolly PM, which right now assists our MSMEs to facilitate international orders. So there are people in Dominica who list the items on Jollies, and then Jollies now sells it on their behalf to some foreign player, and you have persons exporting to as far as Australia and Canada through Jollies e-commerce platform. So and then also you have Shop DM, which is doing something similar, also helping our MSME sector. So a lot of platforms came about because of the challenge of not being able to move around, and they are still with us today. Now, going to the whole Hurricane Maria situation, I recall a little after it occurred, in the initial days, what was happening was that you had a lot of supporters sending dry goods. So you would have the canned goods, you have clothes, would have had these personal protection equipment and so forth. And that was because, at that point in time, everything was shut down. But then coming out of that, what was actually being said and shared with the regional partners was that, okay, the country is open now, let us support the private sector. Rather than sending down goods and stuff, send down money for people and let them go to the shops
All right.
and buy the stuff for themselves. So that was an opportunity for the private sector where they could increase their supplies to cater to the demands of the market. And I even recall when St. Vincent had a similar scenario for their volcanic eruption,
Mhm.
a similar message was sent. Don't send too much dry goods, send cash. Let the
Right.
people go out and buy and build up the economy. So, in a disaster, there is an opportunity, or there could be several opportunities, but it's really us in the private sector to pay attention to the signs and to really position ourselves to make
Right.
use of the opportunities.
Okay. Very good. Uh, Opportunities, as you said, rise out of challenges, and so we know in the Caribbean and in Dominica, we almost every year we have a significant weather event. It may not be a hurricane, it might be a significant rain or some other type of event. And so, as you said, there are opportunities there for folks to put themselves forward to say just what you said. instead of going through the hassle of sending a barrel and all of that, do the cash. There is the equivalent of it. You can even deliver it and all of that. So there are some opportunities there. Uh, there was a question here, right, about a survey that speaks to the state of business in Dominica. I don't think it was quarter 2 because we're still in the second quarter. So it's
Correct.
probably the first quarter survey. Is there anything significant that jumps out of that survey?
Well, this will take us off of the topic, but I guess I
Right.
can speak to it briefly. It is something that we had envisioned doing for some time. We're very happy to have actually executed it. It is the first one that we have done, and we intend to make this a quarterly exercise so that we can understand the trends and better understand what's happening within the private sector. In the chamber, we do our best to operate on data rather
Right.
than just a gut feeling or assumptions. We do a lot of research, and that helps us to advocate for the private sector. Now, the survey was interesting. There, I would say, were mixed responses, but that is expected with any economy. You had some individuals or some companies, I should say, that indicated business has slowed down in the first quarter as compared to previous times. But at the same time, you also had businesses that reported that they had increased sales in the first quarter as compared to previous time. So some persons are experiencing a boom, some persons are experiencing a downturn. The question is why? And I think surveys like that are very important because we sometimes operate from a space of isolation where in our own circle we think that okay, things are tough. But then when you step out of your circle and you hear that someone else is doing good in the same climate, you start challenging yourself and start asking yourself the question, why? Why is someone else able to thrive in this quote unquote climate of ours? What is it that I may need to change? What is it that I may need to tweak? And that is where strategy comes into play. So that helped getting a better perspective of what's happening. Another thing that was interesting was the fact that from the majority of respondents, it was identified that there is a significant growth in female leadership among companies in Dominica.
Hmm.
So all this support and work that has been done in the past to empower our women is working. I
Starting
mean,
to
you
bear
can even,
fruits. Hmm.
yeah, it's big fruits, maybe too many fruits. When I was having a conversation with my colleagues this week, and I said that I'm an advocate for men because it is looking as if the women are taking over and the men are being left behind. And there has been so much work to support the woman, but what work is being done to support the man? I mean,
Yeah.
2 years ago, there was a program in Dominica that supported women farmers, specifically women farmers. A year ago, there was a program that supported women entrepreneurs. The men are forgotten.
You
But I
know,
mean,
I'll give you a joke on that. I went to college in the 80s and in the US, and during break sometimes we would go to where there will be workshops and stuff that's organized to get foreign students, international students and so a lot of the I fellow students from the other islands, Grenada, St. Vincent, and St. Lucia, they used to make fun of us from Dominica and say, all the islands have a women desk, but they understand that Dominica needs a men's desk. And that was in the 80s. So,
wow.
so what you see happening, as you said, as you rightly identified, is because of the support and the specific attention that has been paid to ensure the success of women. And I mean, the lesson from that is if we can apply that across the board,
Yeah,
the
that's what I
if
want.
whatever you pay specific attention to, you will see you will see some development, some energy coming from it. So to go back to our topic, which is disaster preparedness, hurricane season, and so on. Um, that's the purpose of tonight's conversation is to encourage folks to pay specific attention to the risk that's associated with their homes, their businesses, their lives, and so on, and pay attention to it and come up with solutions, because just by focusing on it and taking steps to solve whatever shortcomings, you will eventually see improvement in those conditions. Same things, I guess, with your businesses. If you pay special, like you said, you have your head down and things are tough, and then you step away, or DIC introduces more data in front of you that says, hey, why are you struggling? This other company is thriving. What you tell yourself, what can I do different? So you start paying attention to that. So we've exhausted the hour. I'm going to give you the opportunity to bring the conversation to a close. There may be things that you that I didn't get a chance to ask you, or I didn't think of asking you, that you may have wanted to say. Feel free to say it at this time. And just in general, I'll give you the mic to say a few more words about insurance, about preparedness, about business, about the whole Dominica climate, whatever you choose to as your closing remarks.
All right. Thank you. So I believe we had a very fruitful discussion. We digressed a few times, but definitely engaging discussion. I want to encourage us not just to look at property insurance. It's hurricane season, yes, but to look at our portfolio. Because at the end of the day, when you speak about managing risk involves looking at every aspect of our life. There is one risk of the loss of our property. But funny enough, if your property is damaged and you have property insurance, it can be replaced. It's back. But what about the individual's income that brought the property into place? And that is sometimes something that we overlook, where we put a lot of emphasis on the physical assets of life, which can be replaced, but we don't focus on the individual's income that brought those assets into play, which on its own cannot be replaced. And we have to think about, to an extent, the legacy of our family. Because during a natural disaster, I mean, life happens, it could happen at any time, but during a disaster, we have heard of in Hurricane Maria the loss of life of several people, and they have left people behind. Now, with all that sort of income that you would have provided to them while you were wrong, it puts them at a disadvantage. We have seen cases in industry where, for example, properties are insured, life insurance is on the individual for the sake of the mortgage. The individual, as the mortgage dies, leaves the house behind for their family. And guess what? The family has to sell the property because we think that, hey, I'm leaving a house behind and that's enough. But in truth and in fact, if they don't have the kind of income that you had to maintain the property, you're talking about painting, talking about damage repairs, if there is a yard, upkeep of the yard, if they don't have the income to maintain all of that, as much as you would have wanted to leave a legacy behind, the legacy is not really there because they don't have the capacity. So in terms of our portfolio going outside of just property, what risk is there to you if you're no longer around, whether it be due to life or natural disaster? Do you have plans in place to ensure that those who remain can continue the same standard of living? And I'll also add on health insurance. Health insurance is key because we are the income earners. If we're not able to work, income stops, but we still have bills to take care of and we have
Right.
medical expenses. So those are all the elements of the discussion that one needs to consider. Now, go into a bit more of a general perspective outside of just insurance. I believe as much as a company would have put in place a business continuity plan, families need to start looking at that. So within your circle at your home, you need to have some kind of document, a disaster plan that speaks to, okay, guys, if something happens, this is what we do next. These are the numbers for people to call. These are the numbers for various authorities, because sometimes it could be the parents that go and the children are left there clueless. But if you have those discussions regularly with your children and that document is there, then it will provide some form of assistance. We need to also go into the habit of saving food, saving water, because if you remember from Hurricane Maria, there's a point in time where there was no food, there was no water. But had we known, we would have been better equipped. So all of this comes into play when we speak about being prepared. It is not something to look in isolation. It is something to look from the perspective of full circle. And going back to what we said earlier, Anthony, not everyone has all the money in the world to address all those risks and all those needs, but you should start somewhere. The key thing is start somewhere, though you know the end goal of where you would like to be, but start working on it piece by piece until you feel like you're fully secured and prepared for whatever a disaster or life may bring to you.
That
Oh,
is great. Yeah.
I should add one more thing. I have to give credit to the government. From the chamber's perspective, we made a recommendation coming out of Maria to give credit for premiums paid for health insurance. The government accepted that. I think it was health or property insurance, one of them. But the government accepted that, and they have made it where if a person pays for premiums for the health insurance and for property insurance up to $8,000, it actually reduces the income tax.
Oh,
So it
wow.
is sort of an incentive for you to go out there and put some measures in place to look after your portfolio.
Right. So there is some relief.
Yes,
It reduces your taxable income by so much if you pay an insurance premium to encourage folks to do that, because obviously if you're caught um, uncovered, naked or half naked, then you are at the mercy of charity, I guess.
that's correct.
Okay. It seems like we need to have you back, because we barely scraped the surface on the DIC, the private sector, businesses, and so on. Even insurance, we only managed to really talk extensively about property insurance, which is very enlightening. There's so much that we learned tonight in this 1 hour. I can imagine there's so much more, but so we didn't even get to talk about your other role as the president of the Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. So there's reason for you to come back. Definitely not just to talk about disaster preparedness, but to get people to really be thinking about. And I really like what you said. The same way a business should have a business continuity plan, a family can have a risk mitigation plan. If something happens and mom and dad is not home, who is the closest relative to call, where you go to, so mom and dad knows where to go look for you. Just a general plan, and know where. Okay, in that drawer, that's where we have our insurance information. Something happens to us, you can go there. This is the name of our insurance agent. You can call Mr. Hilaire. That sort of thing, folks. As I said, we need to just start making people start to think about those things and not just put them in the back of your mind because they're not happening at the time and you're so caught up trying to make life. So I think the hour and 20 minutes that we've spent has been well spent. A lot of information we've crammed in there. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time. And I want to congratulate you. You said that you just attained your what is was a
No, master financial advisor.
master financial advice, and then there was another one you said because one was sales and one was admin.
Yeah, fellow Life Management Institutes.
So congratulations, and that was another lesson to continuously grow. Maybe
Correct.
maybe there's a lesson we can learn from our fairer sex colleagues, because the girls seem to be more into that self-improvement, continuing education,
Yes.
and so on. So the men can take a lesson from that and so improve. So congratulations on those two achievements and on
Thank
your
you.
continued leadership in the business and community sector in Dominica. I really appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thank you for having me.
It's a
Anytime
pleasure.
you're ready, just give me a call and I'll be back.
And I should say that, I should recognize that when we reached out, you immediately agreed to come, and we really appreciate that because not everybody agrees to come so readily. But I think you see it as part of the service that you provide to be able to
Yes,
provide the education. And so thank you for that.
it's a pleasure.
All right. It's a pleasure having you. All right. So, Mr. Hillett, thank you again. Folks, you'll agree with me that tonight's discussion was extremely informative. We crammed so much into the 1 hour that we had. I want to thank my guest, Mr. Brenton Hiller. He is the agency manager for Sagicor Dominica. Also, he is the president of the Dominica Association of Industry and Commerce. He is the president of the Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. And he's just a community leader, very progressive and continuously educating himself so that the level of service that he and his team provides continues to improve. I hope you learned something tonight, but if anything, the biggest takeaway is that you should not view your insurance policy as something that you just get and you pack it away. You should become intimately familiar with the terms and conditions of your insurance. You should have a constant rapport with your agent and understand what coverage that you have, to what extent you have it, what enhancement, what improvements you can have, you need to have. I want to thank my audience. They're the usual suspects, so they're part of the This Week in Interview family, and some folks who will come as the first time tonight or occasionally. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the participation and your contributions and your suggestions. And good night, everyone. Let's do this again next week, Wednesday. I want to just talk briefly. Is a little bit relevant. We saw the incident that happened on the construction site at the Dominica Grammar School. And as a former student of the Dominica Grammar School, I'm extremely concerned about that. Also, as an engineer and as a construction professional, I'm curious as to understand the response to that incident, what investigations are happening, and I look forward to the information being made public so that folks like me can understand what happened, what could have prevented it from happening, and where were the shortcomings so that we can avoid that happening again. Also, what happens, what questions, what investigations are going to happen to the other aspects of that construction, the songness of it, uh, also the company that was involved in the design and also the construction of it. What other projects are they doing? Do we need to go and look at the other projects that they do to reassure ourselves of the comfort? Because if I have a child or a grandchild that's attending the Dominica Grammar School right now, or a relative who is a teacher at the grammar school, I would want some of those answers to reassure myself that what remains of the project is sound, that we would not have. Because thank God it happened when the building space was unoccupied because construction is still going on. But what if the construction was done, it was handed over, and there happened to be students or teachers or people in that space? It could have been a major disaster. So let's not just walk past it. Let us take it seriously. It's a very, very serious incident that deserves significant investigation and reports so that we can understand what happened. All right. So I look forward to that. And folks, continue to enjoy your summer's graduation season. So if you graduated or somebody of yours graduated, congratulations. If you're celebrating an anniversary, congratulations, a birthday. If, on the other hand, you lost a loved one, our condolences are with you, and we wish you grace and strength. So, good night, everyone, and we will see you again next week, Wednesday.